So Michigan's closely watched Democratic Senate primary race is still too close to call as of this morning. As of right now, progressive candidate Abdul El-Sayed remains in the lead, with Congresswoman Haley Stevens trailing by less than 2%. The race is a lot closer than polling predicted. Votes are still coming in from Wayne County, which includes the majority black city of Detroit, and Dearborn, which is the nation's largest Arab American majority city. But the uncertainty didn't stop the two candidates from coming out to speak last night.
They want to tell us that here in Michigan, we're a purple state. That somehow everybody walks around wondering, I wonder where I stand on a left-right spectrum. When really, up and down the state, what you hear is, I wonder how I can afford my rent. I wonder how I can afford my groceries. I don't know what will happen if I get sick because I can't afford my deductible. We are not a purple state. We are a state in need of a movement. And however we might feel about the campaign we've just come through, I want you to understand that it pales in comparison to the cynicism, in comparison to the corporatism, in comparison to the lies that Mike Rogers and Donald Trump are going to tell. There is so much more that unites us. However much we might disagree with our Democratic opponent, there is so much more that unites us than divides us.
I am feeling good about this race. I am feeling fired up, and you should be too. They want to keep the Senate red so Mike Rogers can go to Washington again and sell us out to the highest bidder and make himself even wealthier. They want to keep the Senate red so Mike Rogers can ban abortion, gut health care, and roll back workers' rights and voting rights. Friends, we are not going to let that happen.
The candidates weren't the only ones to speak about the race. President Trump even weighed in himself on Fox News last night.
What do you think about the traction these candidates who are backed by the DSA and members of the DSA are getting?
Well, I think it's crazy because they're going to ruin our country. I did great in Michigan, and we should win. We have a man, Mike Rogers is going to be fantastic. Now, I'm not a big believer in polls, but I believe in him somewhat. And based on the polls, he'll do much better against Abdul than he's going to do against the Congresswoman.
Now, that was not the only race, the Senate one, that happened last night. There was a race for Michigan governor and many others as well. In the governor's race, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson cruised to victory with 83% of the vote to become the Democratic nominee. She will now face Trump-backed Congressman John James, who won the Republican nomination with 50% of the vote. All right, joining us live now from the state of Michigan this morning is co-author of Politico's Playbook, my dear friend, Adam Wren. Up early. I know you were at the El-Sayed rally last night, so I got to start there. The expectations were that he was going to have a more comfortable victory, still not called a victory yet. Tell us what the mood was like in that room as things started to trickle in.
Yeah, it became deader as the night went on, Sam. There was a lot of jubilance headed into the night. I interviewed El-Sayed just a few hours before he went to his hotel for the night. And at that point, he was predicting to me that not only would he win significantly in this particular race, that he would beat Mike Rogers in November by 7 points. He told that to me, 7 points. That was a very specific number, I thought. And just a week ago, he was predicting that he would come out of this primary and out of the general election with such a significant backing that he would be able to have the political wherewithal to help foster a challenge to a sitting senator, a primary challenge to John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. He said he would, quote, put an ogre on a pike and quote, and make an example of him. And, he was talking to me yesterday about how 2028 in Michigan for Democrats would really run through him. He said he told me, as I report in this morning's playbook, that if a candidate didn't adhere to his message and they wanted to win 2028 in Michigan, that if they didn't do that, he would dog them, quote, dog them all over the state. And so this isn't quite the monumental win that he was hoping for. And in the room, you could kind of get a sense for that. I talked to one person who told me that if the revolution was coming, it was certainly delayed earlier this morning and last night from Abdul.
Yeah, well, humble pie, I suppose, but he may very well pull it out. And if he does, again, we haven't made a call here yet, but if he does, what are the steps he has to repair some of the burned bridges or the frayed edges within the Democratic Party that come out of this primary?
Well, Sam, it's interesting because he only has about 5 weeks from today, if he is indeed the winner, before some of the first votes are casted to unite the party. And what we heard earlier this morning from him was really the one common thing that Democrats have in Michigan is opposition to Trump, opposition to Mike Rogers. And I think that's sort of indicative of where the party is at nationally. There aren't a lot of commonalities in their approach to this particular moment other than opposition to Trump. Not much else binds them together. That big tent at the moment is missing. And I think it's going to be a challenge to mend those fences. As he said earlier this morning, the party is calling in former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg in for a rally on Friday after the party's unity breakfast on Thursday. He's going to be doing a unity rally and trying to mend those fences here. And it's unclear if they can come together, I think, Sam.
What is the role, as you were on the ground in Michigan, what was the role ultimately of all that outside money on behalf of Stevens? A good chunk of which came through AIPAC, which obviously is a very divisive source of funds these days, to say the least. In the end, did all those tens of millions of dollars help her, or did they hurt her in your estimation?
I think arguably, everybody I talked to would point to the fact that they'd hurt her. We do have to give Abdul El-Sayed his due here. I mean, he campaigned against a 12-1 outside spending advantage on behalf of Haley, and he really made his case. He did almost 500 events over the last 15 or so months across the state, and Congresswoman Haley Stevens, couldn't keep close to that. And so it was interesting, the internet and whether the internet was real life really became an issue down the home stretch of this campaign, Sam. But as it turns out, Haley Stevens was the only one sort of talking about the internet and vibes, over the last week. And it was really El-Sayed getting out there in person in real life and getting a lot of the momentum.
All right, Politico's out of mind. I thank you for waking up, but I think that's part of your new job responsibilities with the newsletter anyway, so no thanks. But I do appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights, buddy.
Good to be with you.
All right. Now, there were a number of other notable races across several states yesterday. In Virginia, former Congresswoman Elaine Luria won the Democratic nomination for the state's 2nd congressional district. Her win sets up a high-stakes general election rematch against Republican Congresswoman Jen Kiggans, who ousted her in 2022. In Missouri, Congressman Wesley Ball won his Democratic primary against former Congresswoman and outspoken activist Cori Bush, who is trying to make a comeback to Congress. And in Kansas, Senator Roger Marshall easily won his Republican primary for Senate and will likely win re-election in November, though I'm watching that one. I'm just going to say that. I'm watching that one. All right.